We have this crazy, incredible technology. Wouldn't it be a shame if it just sat on the shelf and nobody knew it was there? What we really want to try to do is get it out to the warfighters, get it out to the people who need it, get it out to law enforcement.
Welcome to Icons and Insights powered by C360, where the business of sports, technology, and broadcasting converge to create the immersive media economy. Now let's get into it with your hosts, Howard Wright and Cher Jones. For years, some of the most popular technology that we have come to know, trust, and use daily were originally developed from the military. And that includes the GPS way back in 1960, the internet in 1969, also called as the ARPANET, and of course, virtual reality. So we've seen that all in our lifetime. But now technology is evolving at warp speed. Consumer technologies are being redeveloped for military applications. The RoboEyes initiative with the U.S. Armed Forces is a great example of how C360's technology has gone from the playing field to the battlefield. And so I am excited to talk to our guest today. And first, let me bring in my co-host. Howard, how are you today?
I am excellent today, Cher. Thank you for asking. I have the pleasure to introduce not only to the wider audience that will follow us, but newest member of the C360 team. So retired Major General Brian Bishop, who has led the Thunderbirds, has been deployed and protect our nation in fields of battle all over the world. We welcome not just Brian Bishop to this podcast, but to our team.
So first and foremost, Brian, it is so exciting to have you here, but we do want to recognize the fact that you have been serving this country for years. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Cher. It's an honor to serve.
I bet it is, and we're excited to have you here. And I wanted to get right to the meat, this heart of this discussion that we're going to talk about right now, which is, traditionally, as long as I've been alive, traditionally tech has always seemed to come from the military. But how have you seen this evolve over the years? What have you seen when it comes to technology?
It's really amazing, and I think you hit on probably one of the biggest technological pieces that has evolved in the military that's essentially changed the way that we live every day. I mean, you look at your phone here, and it's got a small GPS unit in it, and I can't tell you how many people are using their phone just to navigate. And GPS, as you already said, was designed for the military. In fact, originally, when I was flying F-16s many years ago, we got the first GPS on the airplane, and it was a classified signal from the satellite down to the aircraft, and it was encrypted, and we had GPS codes that we kept in secret vaults and stuff so that our enemies couldn't get to them. But now, I mean, it is a wide open signal. In fact, the truckers going down the road are tracked by GPS. If you go to a rest stop and you put your credit card into a vending machine, the GPS signal there is the clock that's running the timing for the banking system. So GPS itself is just one of many amazing things that has completely changed the way we as consumers interact with the world each and every day.
And you look at that and you look at that adoption of this technology. And then you look at now how there are a lot of companies who, while we relied on the military for our technology and, eventually got passed down like old clothes, is like we eventually get, Big Brother's clothes and it's like, we'll make it work, we'll make it fit. But now there are all these technology companies that are changing and evolving so quickly. So you see these different commercial technology companies, they're partnering with the military to develop and quickly develop technologies. What are you seeing there as far as the opportunity right now?
So one thing that the military had going for it back in the day, if you will, is we were a very large structure and we had resources to be able to go after and try to get some of these amazing technologies that are out there now. Well, with that comes a certain amount of bureaucracy. And with a large bureaucratic environment, it makes it very difficult for us to kind of shift gears and move to different types of technologies. And that's where I think companies like C360 are really amazing. They're coming up with new technologies. And it's not technology just for the sake of technology, but it's a technology that is answering a problem. It's solving a problem out there. The military now is looking towards companies that are small, that are agile, that can shift, that can do things very, very quickly, In fact, since I've retired, the Air Force has a new program called AFWorks, and its whole emphasis is about reaching into small companies and trying to find small companies that are able to develop solutions for problems that we don't even know we have yet. And that's where I see 360 going.
Wow. And Howard, that must excite you.
It does. It's the opportunity that's in front of us right now, and the leadership and the tutelage, and the mentorship also from somebody like Brian Bishop, will help us accelerate and lean right into this opportunity for us.
Oh, absolutely. And when investors are evaluating new opportunities, what should they be looking for in the tech as well as the companies? And let's start with the tech.
And I think I touched on this a little bit. I think the tech is it solving a problem? I like to quote Mark Cuban a lot from Shark Tank, and one of his biggest pieces of advice to these young entrepreneurs is, don't start a business, solve a problem, and then the business will develop. I think that the technology is really cool and it grows, and sometimes you can get a technological solution, but it starts to drift off into a path where it's really just doing technology for technology's sake. Having a company like C360, having them being able to develop this RoboWise system, we've tested it with some explosive ordnance disposal guys in the Air Force. They rave on this technology. When I read the report, noticing that they could accomplish their tasks like taking a robot articulating hand, picking up an egg off of a traffic cone, setting it down and putting it back on the traffic cone without squashing the egg. They could do that in 50% better fashion. And then the mission time was decreased by 50% as well. You start thinking about those sorts of things. And if you can keep an explosive ordnance team out of a building or something like that and let them do this with a robot, it saves lives. It completely reduces the risk. And I just see so many other applications, not just across the military, but in other avenues as well. I mean, they started working in the sporting world, and that's where I kind of got interested in this through a friend of mine, Jed Drake. And he turned me on to the technology and kind of got me hooked.
So that's from a tech perspective. So solving a problem at the end of the day, right? And making sure. And so I guess the companies, so when we look at that, they need to know what the problems are that need to be solved. And that's that inside fast path. So when you're advising, even if you're to advise other VCs or investors, what would you want them to look at or scrutinize when it comes to evaluating a company?
Again, I think it gets to, is the company solving a problem? And are they able to be agile enough to react to a changing world? As we talked about earlier, the military has, through our acquisition process and through many of the things that we have to do now and some of the laws that are in place, and they're in place for a very good reason, because we want to continue to encourage U.S.-based companies to do things for the military. We want to continue to invest in investment, economic growth in the United States. So we want to do this through typically U.S.-based companies in the military, but we are not very agile. The U.S. military is not very agile. I mean, you take a look at an acquisition program for something like the F-22, and it's a 20 or 25-year prospect from concept development to developing the airplane, working with the manufacturer, working to get all the different technologies you want on the airplane and making sure it's all integrated, it's all tested, and it all works. Well, a 20-year timeline, how many iPhones have we been through in 20 years? Has the iPhone even been around for 20 years? So how has that technology changed? And now how's a small company like C360, how agile are they to be able to shift and change with a changing problem set?
Well, Howard, now the question comes to you. How agile are you?
We're very agile. As a matter of fact, we're ready for this moment. I'd love to share with you one of the first conversations that we had with Brian and how he challenged us to step up into this moment. After we gave him probably about a 45-minute download or kind of a readout of all of our capabilities, our solutions, our features, turnaround time, pixelation quality, pixels per frame, everything else, he immediately turned back into the general that he is, which was, how come this wasn't at the Capitol when the insurrection happened? How come this wasn't at Bagram Air Force Base? How come this hasn't been deployed with, some of the armed guard services that create the municipalities, the police stations. It was a barrage of provocative questions that we're still in the process of solving, which is going to make our company better because Brian Bishop is a part of it. Sure. One of the questions was, how come you haven't applied to be a foreign military sales agent and sell equipment to the Israelis and the Saudis and our NATO friendlies? I said, Brian, I don't know where to go to apply on a website to become that. But if you would go on this journey with us, we will promise to bring the quality and the custom craftsmanship of our solution that is synonymous with your personal brand.
And I bet you, Brian, that was very important to you, is just knowing that you are also aligning yourself with the right company because of just your years of service, your years of experience, being able to see this market. That must have been incredibly important for you.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that Howard said to me when we first started talking about this was, we have, and I'm speaking in Howard's terms here, we have this crazy, incredible technology. Wouldn't it be a shame if it just sat on the shelf and nobody knew it was there? What we really want to try to do is get it out to the warfighters, get it out to the people who need it, get it out to law enforcement. Those are the types of things that I see in this. There are 1,000, probably maybe tens of thousands of other applications where C360 technology can assist. But the biggest thing is, we don't want it sitting on the shelf waiting for somebody to look for it. We want to get out there and make sure that people who need this kind of technology, people who we can help save lives, let's get it out there and use it.
Mm-hmm. And that is incredibly important. And so going back to even just my question around other investors evaluating companies, basically they want a Brian on their team. And they should have a Brian on their team as far as moving to that next level and working in this convergence of commercial tech with military applications and trying to make that the win. Is that correct? They need a Brian?
Well, you're being very kind. Thank you. I hope that I can provide some value to C360. I can help them think through some things, or at least maybe guide them through some of the military processes, which could be very, very difficult. But I think more importantly, maybe it's some of my experience that can help them think about C360 technology application in other ways. And then I think that opens up just another world that is out there for this type of technology, this type of capability.
And I think it's also important to now take a step back and look at just when we look at your career and we look at outside of C360, what else are you working on? What else are you doing out there?
Well, I am very, very fortunate. Right now, I'm getting to do some really fun things as well. Through my association with the Air Force Thunderbirds many years ago, I was able to get into the air show business and meet many of the performers, and two of them are very dear friends of mine. Michael Goulian, who I currently work with, he was a former Red Bull air racer. He's an aerobatic pilot. He's a world champion aerobatic pilot, and also works with Cirrus Aircraft. So I'm able to work with him in his business and help mentor and coach and teach other pilots and help these owners learn about flying and learn about the stick and rudder types and learn some really cool things about their flying and what they could do with their aircraft from an experience standpoint. Not necessarily make it tumble and twist like Michael does, but being able to use a small airplane to open up their world and get them to go places and see things. How many people can take an airplane and go to Dayton, Ohio and see the Air Force Museum and spend a half a day there and then turn around and come back? You just don't do that on the commercial side. Another dear friend of mine, Sean Tucker, is another world-class aerobatic pilot. And 2 weeks ago, I'll brag just a tiny bit, I was able to go out with him, and we were doing some formation aerobatics, and he was very, very kind to lead me through some stuff. And so we were flying wing overs and barrel rolls and loops with two airplanes, about 2.5 to 3 foot wingtip spacing apart. And that was just really, really exciting and a really super big challenge for me.
I think the best part about that was when you actually let us know what you were doing that weekend. And it was just like, well, I'm trying to decode WandaVision and Howard's knee deep in diapers and babies. And you are doing formations. Okay, I'll live vicariously through you this weekend. So I think that's awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
And Howard, I know for you, leadership is so important. And I know that as you just dive into your network and you connect with these leaders over this podcast, and he's an iconic leader that we have sharing with us today, what's that one question that you want to ask when it comes to leadership?
Specifically for Brian, I think about, his distinguished military career, all the stripes up and down his arm, all the pounds of badges on his chest. Is professionally, what was your best day on the job and why? Professionally, what was your worst day on the job and why? If you are at liberty to tell us.
Wow. Howard, I don't mean to cop out, but there were so many best days and so many worst days. And let me try to narrow it down. Here's one of my probably in my top 5 best days. There's a program called STEP. It's a STEP promotion. It's Stripes Through Exceptional Performance that the Air Force has. And it applies to our enlisted force. And when I was the wing commander at Kunsan Air Base in Korea, which is like being a small mayor, we had 3,000 airmen on the base with us. We're all there unaccompanied, which means we don't have our families. My command chief was able to get some stripes for us so that I could go out to our airmen and present some of our very, very top best performers and promote them on the spot, essentially promote them on the spot. And the real cool thing about the STEP promotion system is that they get promoted the day that I pin it on them. That means their pay changes. That means their benefits change. That means everything changes that day. And so it's a very big deal. And we'd given out all of our stripes. And so the entire base knew that all the stripes had been given away. But my chief was able to go to the higher headquarters and we got one extra stripe. And so we walked into this dental technician's office who I was going to promote. And I looked at her and I said, "How are you doing today?" He thinks, "Oh, sir, I'm doing really good." I said, "Well, can you tell me about how you're supporting the mission today?" "Well, sir, let me tell you about this, and this is what I'm doing." And I said, "Well, I'm very sorry. We're getting ready for a big inspection." She was going to give this briefing to the inspectors. And I said, "I'm very sorry, but I can't allow you to give that briefing." And she looked at me with just this hook of horror on her face. Like, what did I do wrong? I can't believe she had practiced it. It was spot on. It was such a great briefing. And I said, "You're just out of uniform." And she immediately looked down and tried to find out what was wrong with her uniform. And I pulled out this extra set of stripes and I pinned it on her shoulder right there. And she had the absolute biggest smile on her face. And to see that and to be able to impact somebody's life that way, it's a small thing, nothing that I did, everything. But to see that, I still get emotional when I think about her smile and to know that she just got promoted. She got step promoted. It impacts her family. It impacts her future. It impacts everything that she does. And that was just such an honor to be able to do that. Now, the worst day. Well, and I think this happens with, it doesn't matter what career field you're in. There are times when people are people and people make mistakes. And there's been a number of times when I've had to unfortunately bring airmen in and discipline them, whether it be in Article 15 or whatever. That's always a really, really hard thing to do because I'm a firm believer that everybody is trying to do their best each and every day. And I believe that all these men and women are trying to do their best each and every day. And sometimes some stray and sometimes some get led astray by others. But having to make sure you discipline them, you've got to keep integrity in the system. You've got to keep accountability in the system. And I think that applies across the board with no matter what size the company you are, whether you're in the military or you're civilian, doesn't matter where you are. People are people, and sometimes people problems are just tough to deal with.
Copy that, sir.
Well, those are some lessons learned, and I love the story. I love how you told that story, especially the one where you added the stripe, and I could feel the emotion in that. So I can see why that was just one of those days that are going to just stick with you forever.
Absolutely, absolutely.
If you could give one book as a gift to everyone, because you just know that it was so impactful, what book would it be?
A very thin, very easy to read. Because I'm a fighter pilot, so we don't work the written word very well. We do pictures a whole lot better. But a very thin, very easy to read book called A Message to Garcia. And the book essentially talks about a fictitious character who's who has a commander, and this commander asks the soldiers around him to do this task. And everyone has an excuse for why they don't want to do it, except for Garcia. And Garcia stands up and says, "Sir, I will take it, and I believe it's taken a message across the battlefield, across enemy lines, to try to get it to somebody else, to do something and make sure that the front is held and that sort of thing." And he's going to go against all kinds of odds. People are shooting at him, but his sole attitude of, "I'll take the message. I will go do this. Let me go do the best job that I possibly can, no matter what it is." That message has resonated with me throughout my career, and it's something that I talk about with airmen and people that I mentor. That there's always an excuse not to do something. Try to figure out the reason why to do it. One of the rules that I live by is find a way to say yes. It's very easy to say no. And when you say no to people, when you say no to subordinates, it kind of deflates them. But if you say yes to some really what they may see as a weird idea, or you may think it's really wild, they may think it's the best idea in the world. If you can figure out a way to say yes, or even a partway yes, it's amazing how that energizes them and how it empowers them to want to do more and just be better and better individuals.
Oh, sounds like an awesome book. Howard, we're going to have to add it to the book club.
That's not the truth. And so, you see why I am so excited to introduce Brian to our company, to Brian to this, Insights from Icons podcast and what we're trying to share. Me personally, I've been 6'8" since I was 17 years old, so I probably would have never qualified for any military service or anyway, but for long history, including my great-great-grandfather who served in the United States Colored Troops, uncles in Vietnam, and others. I've been a kind of a history buff and a nerd about these things. Brian, I've told you this in private. I want to tell you this in public now, which is, yes, I'm going to look forward to the tutelage and the mentorship as you give me as a CEO, but I'm also going to learn as a man as to the depth of the appreciation for those who have served and the legacy that we have in creating, purpose-built precision devices and solutions for those men and women. I do not take myself seriously, but I take that responsibility very seriously.
Thank you, Howard, and I will be learning just as much from you.
Well, there you have it. We have our icon, and we certainly got our insights today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to the next episode.